Welcome to this guide on the basics of the personal union system in EU4. Today I'm just going to be going over how the system works, so hopefully you'll have a better understanding by the end of the video how it works and not think it's complete luck. There is a luck element to the system, but you can heavily swing things in your favor so you get more personal unions more often. So there's multiple things to keep in mind. The first is that you have to be a monarchy and you have to be a Christian nation to interact with the personal union system. You won't be able to have personal unions or fall under personal unions if you don't meet those two requirements. And when I say Christian nation, that means anybody that falls under any of the Christian ones that would be considered Christian. So Hussite counts, Orthodox counts, Protestant and Anglican later on counts, all the Christian nations. So Muslim, Buddhist, those would not count. So just keep those in mind. If you don't meet one of those requirements, your country won't fall under a personal union and you won't be able to have any junior partners, which is what the other country that's ruled by you is called. So for in this example, I've loaded up a game as Denmark because they start out in a good spot for this guide. If you look at their subjects, at the beginning of the game, Denmark rules over Norway and Sweden. So Denmark is the senior partner in this relationship, and Sweden and Norway are considered the junior partners because the king of Denmark, if we go over here, Christopher III von Wittelsbach, rules all three countries. Now, if we click on Norway, we can see they have a personal union. They don't have any say over their country. They're ruled completely by Denmark's king. That's something to keep in mind. That's how the personal union system works. So we would want, if things went our way, to just have everybody in Europe here under our crown. Obviously that's unlikely, but that's what you would like, and there's actually an achievement for getting 10 personal unions, so if you can make that work. So you're wondering, how do you do that? There's a couple ways that are really easy. Like some countries like Poland, Lithuania, they will get an event to fall under a personal union together. Or somebody like Austria has a whole bunch of stuff in their mission tree to get personal unions. So they'll just get a casus belli to, for instance, invade Bohemia and force them into a personal union. Like those ones, they're easy and they pretty much just happen by you playing the game. Most personal unions, though, like for most players, because a lot of players don't have these specialized missions or events, for instance, Denmark here, if we want to have this happen, we need to have our family name, so the von Wittelsbach, on other people's thrones. And the way to see if we have that is to go over the king. You can go over the king's name on any country. It doesn't have to be this one. Like if you want to see what Austria is up to, you can go over von Habsburg and it will tell you. So I'll go over this real quick. If we look at the von Wittelsbach family here, what we're going to want to do is go down towards the middle there, and you can see that he leads a personal union with Sweden, leads a personal union with Norway, but the more important thing, it says same dynasty. That means it's our family, our brother, our sister, a cousin, somebody is ruling over their nation that we're related to, which is important. As you can see, our dynasty, the von Wittelsbach family, is over 4 different countries right now. We don't have a personal union with them, but our family, somebody in our family rules over that nation. And if you look at the very bottom, you can see what's going to happen to our country if something happens to our current king. So if Christopher III dies right now, a random noble from the house of von Wittelsbach, another cousin, whoever, will be picked and put on the throne. And the reason this is happening is we don't currently have an heir. If we had an heir, let's say we had Christopher IV von Wittelsbach as our heir, it would say on the bottom, if he's too young, a regency would happen, and if he was old enough, it would say he succeeds to the throne. So by using this little tooltip here, you can see what's going to happen. This can be important because if you click on, you're wondering, Bohemia is wrong choice. Saxony here, we're wondering what's going to happen with them. We can see a regency is going to happen for their heir because he's too young. The reason to keep this in mind is if it's a country you're trying to get to fall under a personal union with you, you can go over this and you will see that it'll say if something happens to this guy, if let's say they don't have an heir and we were our family was here, there's the chance every time. Actually, you know what? Let's go to... Who did we have? We had Munich, Landshut. Let's find one. So Landshut here. They currently have an heir. I wonder if one of them doesn't have an heir. Something to always keep in mind too is there's this little tooltip here that will show you people that do not have an heir. Let me look real quick. Ingolstadt. Perfect. Ingolstadt is right here. Ingolstadt does not have an heir right now. As you can see, no legal heir. So if we go over them, it will say Munich and Denmark, us, will have a succession war for their crown. So if Ingolstadt's king was to die right now, there's a good chance we would be able to get them to fall into a personal union with us, because frankly we could crush Munich. There's nothing they could do about it. Unless Munich had some, let's say, where's Munich at? Let's see. So currently they have nobody because it's the beginning of the game. But if they had strong alliances, maybe we couldn't. Which is why it's good to have some good allies, because if they help you in the war, they can help you make sure you get your personal unions, because that happens. A lot of times you'll see a succession war in your own games if you're playing in Europe over Burgundy. When the Burgundian inheritance happens, a lot of times it's France and Austria fighting over them is a common example. So if you have strong allies to back you up, it can make it a little easier to win those succession wars. Mostly, the other thing to keep in mind also is that your countries will not fall under a personal union with you if they are at war. So if we use our Ingolstadt example here, let's pretend that sometimes a succession war will not happen. Sometimes they will just fall immediately into a personal union with us. Because our family's already here, effectively we have a legal right to go, well, our family's been ruling this country. I, Christopher III, will just claim the throne, and then bam, they're under a personal union with you. You're not actually doing anything. It just happens if you get lucky. Now, the way to swing this in your favor is two main things. One, high prestige. If you keep your prestige high, like if you're trying to play the personal union game, try to keep your prestige at 100 at all times if you can. As you can see on the bottom, it says, or in the middle of the text box there at the bottom of the text box, it says, more likely our royal marriages will result in personal unions. Prestige is super important. Another thing that's super important is your diplomatic reputation. If you have a high diplomatic reputation, it makes it more often that people will fall under personal unions with you. If we had a super high diplomatic reputation and a super high prestige, there might not even be a succession war with Munich. They might just fall into a personal union with us the moment he died. So the point is that because our family is here, our family name is here, there's a chance every time that their king dies and they have no heir, that they fall under a personal union with us without us doing anything else. Which is why, if you've played a few games before, you might have randomly gotten a personal union and been like, well, why did that happen? How did I get this? Somehow, and I'll go over how to spread your dynasty, how to spread your family name, somehow your family name ended up in their court, and then they died without an heir. And ta-da! The game rolled the dice, and hey, you were picked. So let's go over how to spread your dynasty. It's pretty simple, but there are things you can do to put it in your favor. So, for instance, if we put a... let's see who wants to get a royal marriage with us. So if we look at all these green ones here, so Brandenburg here would take a royal marriage with us. And just for our example, we'll say, yes, okay, sure. We've got a royal marriage now with Brandenburg. We go over to Brandenburg here. So currently, nothing's happened. The whole Hohenzollern family still doing well. Now the difference is, because they have a royal marriage with us, if, let's say, this guy's 30, let's say for some reason, oh no, he dies. And oh no, the heir comes up and he dies also, or the heir dies beforehand. If their current king dies and they have no heir, there's a chance that somebody from our family, because we have a royal marriage with them, will get picked as the new king. It doesn't automatically put them in a personal union with us. It just puts our family line on their throne. So the same way that Ingolstadt is currently. All of a sudden there'd be Frederick the third, or Frederick the Fourth, von Wittelsbach instead. Our family line would be there, and all their heirs would be von Wittelsbachs. And ta-da, we have a chance now to get a personal union with them. So by having as many royal marriages as you can, increases your odds incredibly to get a personal union. Now the thing to keep in mind is if you get royal marriages with people that already don't have heirs, which if we go over this crown, so if you ever see this crown come up, this is telling you, it says disputed succession because they don't have heirs for some reason. So if we find somebody, who is biased that doesn't have... So we're looking for... So what we want is we want somebody who doesn't have an heir and is old. If you look on there, you can see the ages. So Gotland there is 62 years old and doesn't have an heir. So 62, his odds of dying, very high. Let's see if we can... for some reason I'm blanking on where Gotland is. We'll just go find them though. There they are. I don't actually play as Denmark very often, so Gotland should be obvious. But the point is, if we could royal marriage them, well, we can. Oh, well, this is huge. So as you can see, their duke is very old. Like, he could literally die next month. Wouldn't be surprising. So right now, if we go over it, you can see a succession war between Wolgast and Stettin would happen because they're in the same dynasty. Let's royal marriage him real quick. And now you can see on Monarch's death, a succession war between Denmark and Stettin would happen. Same thing as we were talking about Ingolstadt before, or Ingolstadt, where it would be us in Munich. The chances are we're going to crush Stettin if they could decide to get involved, and Gotland would fall into a personal union with us. So already, by using the systems of the game, just looking out for this, and you can see now that it's in green. The green means we have a royal marriage with this country, so this is like a country of interest to us now. All the ones in yellow are countries that, you know, we don't have a royal marriage with. Now, admittedly, Ingolstadt's on the list if you go down, and we should go get a royal marriage with them if we can, because same thing. Getting them to fall into a personal union would be huge. Now, in this case, a succession war would happen. That doesn't always happen. It could also be that he dies and our family goes on the throne, and that's it. That would still be good, though, because like I said, the more our family gets on thrones, the better. It increases the odds that we get that lucky roll, and ta-da, we get the personal union every time they die without an heir, if our family's on there. And once again, remember that prestige and diplomatic reputation are the two most, like, they're huge factors in getting these. So you want to try to have, if you're planning to play the personal union game, you want diplomatic reputation to be high, you want prestige to be high. And that's why, if you look on here, one reason it's disputed successions also is these people, prestige is not very high. Admittedly, ours is not very high either. And just for our example, let's go over to our estates. Normally I would set all these to the correct thing, but we can go to, where is it? Oh, just give me a moment. Oh, there we go. Right here. Gain 15 prestige, so we will gain that real quick just to make our prestige suddenly a 19, which is huge. Let's go to Gotland again. See if Gotland changed because our prestige. No. The same thing's going to happen. The succession war is still going to happen. And you'll notice, because we got a royal marriage with them, at the bottom where before it only said, you know, what was going to happen. Like if we went to Denmark here, before it only said what was going to happen with us. On a monarch death, somebody... Oh. Interesting. So if we go over here to, well, if we just go over this, it says on monarch death, a noble from House von Hohenzollern would succeed to our throne, which would be just terrible. So if we go over here, remember we royal marriaged the Hohenzollern family, so potentially we could lose our, like, if for some reason Christopher died right now, he's only 28. Likely we're going to get an heir and we'll be fine. But if for some reason he died right at this moment, a noble from House von Hohenzollern would succeed to the throne. So suddenly our all of our work we've put in with Ingolstadt, with Gotland, trying to spread our family name, well, our family line doesn't exist in Denmark anymore. And all of a sudden we'd be have the same family line as Brandenburg. That can be a nightmare if that happens. Something to keep in mind, though, is sometimes it's beneficial, because all of a sudden now we could claim a personal union with Brandenburg, because well, we're in the same family line now. So I realize that might sound somewhat complicated, and it is, but hopefully you're noticing how things are changing. We royal marriage them, all of a sudden, because we don't have an heir, we could fall under their family line. Because Gotland didn't have an heir, we royal marriage them. Ta-da! A succession war between us and another country would happen. You can see how these things are changing based on what we're doing. It's not just random. We are influencing how these are going. If we had not royal marriage Brandenburg, then it would have still said that our own a noble from our family would have gone on there. So these are all things to keep in mind. They're all things to watch. I mean, it is complex. If we go over, let's go over the next thing, because mostly you're spreading your family line through royal marriages. And, I guess something else to keep in mind is that, remember that the other countries are also getting royal marriages. So the more you can get out, the more your family line will spread without your involvement. Every royal marriage Ingolstadt does, every royal marriage Landshut does, if they, get royal marriages with all these little countries around them, there's the chance every time all these little countries dies without an heir, that the von Wittelsbach family gets on their throne without your involvement, just because, Landshut decided, I'm going to royal marriage Bohemia, and maybe Bohemia later on in the game dies without an heir, and the von Wittelsbach family gets on Bohemia's throne. We don't have a personal union yet, but our family line is there, which is what makes it much, much easier to happen. So that's something to keep in mind too, is the more you spread it, then they'll start spreading it for you, potentially. Which is why sometimes, like later on in the game, you're in the middle of the game, you might be looking at, something to keep in mind, there's this little bust picture. If you click on that, it will show the dynastic map. If you click on this every once in a while, you might see your family line somewhere where you weren't expecting it. You might be like, how did my family line get in Brittany? Or Aragon? Or Naples? That's odd. How did it get there? Probably because, maybe a Landshut there, royal marriage Naples, and then Naples at some point died without an heir, and your family line got on there. That can happen. And then all of a sudden, you've got another, potential victim that could fall under a personal union with you. If you're not sure, this dynastic button is under diplomatic map modes. I thought it was under diplomatic, but not. Maybe it's political. I may be telling you. Oh, I'm wrong. It's political. So the map mode, if you want to see where dynasties are, under that. Just keep that in mind. Is under the political button. But as you can see where all the different family lines are. As you can see right now, some of these countries do not currently have a king. They don't have a family line. That'll resolve itself momentarily. We just started the game. But you can see over here, we can see that Castile and Aragon and Navarra all have the same family line. They're all de Trastamare. So that's, and so does Naples. These are all the same family. So that's just something to check every once in a while to see if somehow your family has ended up, on Burgundy's throne or somewhere weird. Like, it happens. I had a game recently where I was playing down here in Italy, and I checked this, and my family line was on Denmark's throne. I didn't do anything for that. But I had royal marriages with people like Austria, and Austria... I don't feel like it was Austria. Oh, I had Burgundy, and Burgundy had eventually fallen under my family name, and they probably spread it up to Denmark for me. So they're all things to keep in mind, keep an eye out for. Because if you don't do anything, well, potentially the personal unions happen without you. But these are all ways you can influence it yourself. So always keep an eye on this disputed succession button. So let's go look at Ingolstadt real quick. Since they have our family, you might be wondering, is there some way we can influence the like make the odds higher that we will personal union them immediately, as opposed to having to get into succession wars, or potentially them just getting a von Whittle, just getting another noble, and we don't get anything out of it. Like, they don't fall into a personal union with us. Just some random von Wittelsbach goes to the throne, and we don't have any say over it. We'd rather them fall completely under our crown, and not just our family, if we can make it happen. So, if we click on this, and we go to... what we want a royal marriage first, which right now they don't like us enough. So give me a moment, and I will improve our relations. Okay, so I have, to make it simpler, I just allied them, because that'll make it quicker, just for the example. Sometimes it's worthwhile to wait to get the relations or whatever it can be. But let's let this go. Let's see. So we should be able to royal marriage them in just one moment. Let the time go by here. And you can see they're willing to royal marriage us. Let's do that. But now that we've done that, you can see it doesn't make any complaints about us claiming their throne. Now, one reason I did the alliance option was because I'm trying to do it fast. Sometimes you want to do it fast because if an heir shows up, your chance to claim their throne or do any of those things disappears. So instead, we can claim their throne now because we're meeting all the requirements. They don't have an heir, we have a royal marriage with them, and our family line is there. We're going to claim their throne. Something to keep in mind, you can see this action will lower our relations with all countries we have a royal marriage with. And, sometimes more importantly, it will lower our prestige, which can negatively affect us in other areas. Like if we're trying to get a personal union over somebody else, having, like in this case, a negative prestige would be a big hit to that. But for this example, we're going to leave it. As you can see, we now have the claimed throne casus belli, so we can make this happen. Now, obviously, if we declare war right now, we're going to get war exhaustion of 1. Let's go. There we go. Well, I need to let the time go by. Blah blah blah. Oh, I just forgot we had an alliance. So the problem with having the alliance. Let's dissolve that. Bye. Now the reason I'm doing all these things, dissolving the alliance and all these things and doing it quick, because right now, as you're gonna see, we are going to take a look at this, breaking truce -5. This is super expensive. It's not so bad at the beginning of the game because, well, we can only go to -3. But obviously I'm rushing this. And you can see this is why we'd want to ally more people. Like, maybe we could win this war. Maybe we couldn't. This is just an example, and I am rushing it to some extent. But later on in the game, if you get an option, let's say you're doing great in your Denmark game, and for some reason Brandenburg, which we did royal marriage earlier, oh, we could get a personal union with them, with this claimed throne. Sometimes it's worth it to take this stability hit, use admin power to boost yourself back up to positive stability to get that. Because if you wait too long, like for instance, we right now have this claimed throne on them. Like, it's legal for us to claim their throne. Now we could wait. We go over here, our truce, 5 years. In 5 years, our truce with Ingolstadt will end. And then we could do the declare war without much penalty, just the royal marriage penalty, because we can't not have a royal marriage. If our royal marriage ends, we'll lose our claim. But we can't have that happen either. So we could roll the dice and hope we can last 5 years. Our king can't die. They can't get an heir. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of luck involved. Which is why I was telling you, you can try to put things in your favor, but you can't guarantee what will happen. If he gets an heir in those 5 years, you'll lose your claim. You have to make the determination, how important is this claim to you? If it's important, well, you're going to declare war, and you're going to deal with the consequences of bad stability, or you're going to immediately boost it up with, if you had saved up admin power, maybe. But as you can see, we've, even though we're literally barely into the game, we've got a reason to claim the throne of Ingolstadt, by manipulating things and using all the different tools available to us. So that's just things to keep in mind. You can see now Ingolstadt is green. Now, if we had had lower prestige than Ingolstadt, we would not be allowed to claim their throne. That's something to keep in mind also. Something to keep in mind also is if we go to war with Ingolstadt right now, and then during the war, let's say the war takes us 3 years. If during the war they get an heir, it doesn't matter. It's too late for them. The war's already started. When the war ends, that heir's done for. We're taking the throne anyways, as long as you win, obviously. So that's just something to keep in mind. And if we, like I said, if we don't want to use that claim throne, we can just hope it'll happen. We can hope they don't get an heir before, hopefully he'll die and succession war will happen. We can hope for that. Because maybe he will die first. There's no way to know. There's always the waiting game you can play also, as long as you've got your family line on there. Something else to keep in mind also is that you don't have to be allied with somebody for this to happen. So it's completely worthwhile for us to look through this list and just royal marriage all these people we think, like Anhalt. The guy's 55 years old. Just royal marriage all these people that potentially we could, like Poland. Poland wouldn't be a great choice because of the event they end up with. I just know that from metagame knowledge. But it can be worthwhile to just place royal marriages all over the place on countries that have no heir and their current heir is old, and see what happens, and just keep doing that over and over again. Just keep moving your royal marriages around to different countries and hope you get lucky. That's always something to do. And also, one last way you can get a personal union on somebody, or your family line somewhere, I should say, is through the favor system. Now, I know this is a DLC. I can't think off the top of my head what it is. But if you have the DLC for the favor system, something you can do is, if you go over here, if you have this system, if it's somebody, a lot of times this happens and works out well with somebody that you've been allied with, fighting wars with, been a friend most of the game. So let's say I had allied, with Poland or Austria or France, somebody big and powerful where they're probably not going to naturally fall into a personal union with you. They might, but it's not as often. What you can do is, if your favors are high, and trust and favors tend to be high with somebody you've been friends with and fighting wars with all game, what you can do is, if you go down to the bottom here to favors, go to right here. If they currently do not have an heir, as like Bohemia right here. If Bohemia, let's say Bohemia and I have been friends all game, 100 trust, 100 favors. Well, guess what? I can press this button right here. And as you can see, Bohemia will accept this. They will put our family line as their heir. And ta-da, your family line's there. Which means anytime later on in the game when they don't have an heir and you've got high prestige and they have lower prestige, you can use what we just used on Ingolstadt, except for it's a much bigger country. We can go over to the dynastic actions and claim their throne. because we use the favor action to get our family line on there. Request relative as heir. So that request relative as heir button is extremely powerful if you have the DLC, because you can be friends with somebody for a while, get your family line on there, and then just, even if you want to not be an ally with them, not be friends with them anymore, all you have to do is make sure you keep royal marriaging them. You don't have to keep being allies. As long as you maintain the royal marriage, if at any point they don't have an heir and you've kept your prestige high, bam, you claim their throne and probably immediately declare war on them if you're not allied, because it's only a 1-point hit to your stability to potentially get a big country under your crown. So that's always a huge thing to do. It's always something to keep in mind. So another thing to keep in, I guess the next subject would probably be, how do you lose these? As Denmark right now, we have 2 personal unions. What if we were playing as Sweden and we don't like that? Multiple things can happen. If you have a negative, if there's a negative relation between the senior and the junior partner, let's say right now that we have a negative 100 relation with Sweden. If our king dies, then our personal union will probably end. And you'll be able to see that. If you go over this, a lot of times you can see if it will. I say it doesn't say. Actually, normally you go over Sweden's is the way to do it. Yeah, see, it says on monarch death, the personal union with Denmark continues. But if we had really bad relations, it might say the personal union will end and somebody from, pick some Swedish family, will take the throne over. Same thing with Norway. As you can see right now, nothing's happened. You can it'll just continue with the personal union, which is something to keep an eye on if you think it could be, relations are getting bad or they're disloyal. You always want to keep an eye on it. Now, disloyalty we'll go over in one moment. Another way for a personal union to end, and you can see it on the bottom there. It says chance of Denmark inheriting Norway 0%. And that's based on a bunch of different things. And the main thing here is that you cannot inherit or integrate a personal union, a junior partner, if you haven't been in that personal union for 50 years. So it's going to be a while. It takes a while. Once you've been there for 50 years, having high diplomatic reputation and high prestige can make it happen for free. As you can see there, it says chance of inheriting Norway 0%. Also, if you're much bigger than the other country. If you're small, like right now Denmark's technically smaller than Sweden, it's always going to be 0. It's not going to change. If you were bigger with good diplo rep and high prestige, though, there's that percentage might say 30%. There's a chance every time your king dies that you just inherit the whole country, and bam, that whole country says Denmark over it, which is really nice. The other way to do it, if you don't want to wait for it to somehow happen, that percentage chance to happen, is you can go down to influence actions and integrate. Integrate will be you making them part of your country diplomatically. Now, there's lots of things you need for this. As you can see on the tooltip, you have to have more provinces. You have to have been in a personal union for 50 years. You have to have high relations. Assuming you have all those things, though, it pretty much will use your diplo points and slowly integrate them into your country. So the bigger they are, the longer it takes. And the more diplomatic reputation you have, the quicker you will be able to do it, though. So keep that in mind. If you have high diplomatic reputation, you'll be able to integrate people very fast. Just keep in mind that it's using your diplomatic power. So you really, a lot of times, if you're integrating somebody, you won't be able to keep your diplomatic power won't move anywhere a lot of times. So just have to keep that in mind. But it's still worthwhile, because, if you could integrate Norway and Sweden, look how much bigger you're going to be all of a sudden. So that's something to keep in mind, too. So personal unions will end if you have bad relations with between the junior and your senior partner. So that you shouldn't really let ever happen. You should always just keep your relations high so that they can't just abandon it because, we don't like each other. Also, it can happen through integration, either automatically if you happen to be able to get that inheritance, or through the diplomatic button of integrating them. The other couple ways is there's a few rebel types that if you just sit there and watch them take over the country and enforce their demands, they could enforce demands that cause your personal union to end. Because remember, for instance, you have to be a monarchy or you have to be Christian. If for some reason their government type changed, their religion changed, your personal union would immediately end. So just keep that in mind. Also, it could be pretender rebels that, since you just sat there and watched, because it takes a while for them to enforce their demands. If they enforce their demands of, we want to be free and we want, whoever the pretender rebel was to be on the throne, well, he'll take the throne if you just sit there and watch. So don't let rebels just run around your subjects, because sometimes, like if Sweden's like, I'm disloyal, they might want that to happen, or more likely what happens is Sweden is not strong enough to stop the pretender rebels, and so it just happens, and since you didn't do anything about it, it's going to happen. So just watch out for rebels. Probably the last thing that happens to a lot of people is under the subject interaction tab, is that they're disloyal. That's what this little one looks like a chain is. If you look at that, you can see right now, Sweden, not very loyal. Norway's very loyal. Loyalty is between 0 and 100%. So if they're over 50%, they'll be disloyal. So if Sweden got a little higher on this, eventually they would, like over 50%, they're disloyal. They may try to stab us in the back. Let's say we got into a big war trying to fight over Ingolstadt with Austria and a bunch of other people, and our manpower is low and our troops are low and we're fighting. Sweden might go, they look weak, and declare an independence war on us. And if they win, they'll be independent. So that's something to keep in mind, is if you allow yourself to get too weak, your personal union partners might declare war on you for independence, especially if their liberty desire is incredibly high. Like, even if it's mostly if you're weak, though. Like, even if Sweden was at 60% liberty desire, if we were a lot stronger than them, they still probably won't declare on us. But if we're in a weak point, they will stab us in the back to get free. So keep that in mind. You want to keep this liberty desire low if you can. And there's lots of ways to do that. As you can see, their opinion of us matters. So keep relations high, that will help. Trust matters, which is a part of that favor interaction. When I was showing you that earlier, let me just click on there real quick. You click on that, you can see trust. Right now, trust is super high. If our trust was at like 0, which could happen, because like I bet if we click on Ingolstadt here, yeah, the trust is only 25 because we broke our alliance with them. Like, we claimed their throne, they don't trust us. And so even if we do get a personal union with them, we're probably going to get a negative in that liberty desire. It'll say trust towards Denmark, and potentially it'll be a negative. It'll be in red because they don't trust us. And it'll take time to get that trust back up. Same thing with relations. Opinion of us will probably be low because we're going to militarily just seize their throne. They're not going to like that. So a lot of times, especially if it's somebody big, because Ingolstadt is small, if we did that, we won the war, they probably won't have a high liberty desire because they're so weak. If, for instance, we'd done this scenario though with Bohemia, at the beginning their liberty desire is going to be high because they don't like us, they don't trust us, lots of problems. So that's something to keep in mind. As you can see there, Denmark has negative prestige, and it says 0% because our prestige is technically 0 right now, like it's 0.06. So it's not affecting us. But if we had negative 50 prestige, we'd be getting a negative towards our liberty desire also. And it works the other way. High prestige helps counter that. So that's why I said high prestige is important. High diplomatic power important, because you can see Danish diplomatic reputation. That's based on your diplo rep. So having a high diplo rep will help a lot with keeping your subjects loyal. Another thing, if you just have a big subject and they don't want to be loyal, you can click on the subject interaction tab by clicking on them. This is I Know Another DLC. I can't remember offhand which one it is. There's multiple things you can do. You can support loyalists, which, as you can see, reduces liberty desire 20%. It's pretty big, but it costs you money. So that's something to keep in mind. And there's lots of other things on here. If they had debt right now, you could pay off their debt for a temporary bonus. That's a bonus that will slowly go away over time. So it's not going to help. In the long run, it won't help you because eventually they'll be disloyal. Again, if you don't have some other way to fix their loyalty. So there's a few buttons in there. Another way is like, especially Age of Discovery for Denmark. They have a Danish subject loyalty. I realize once again, the ages, I believe that's Mandate of Heaven, I think. But this is a DLC also. So if you don't have a DLC, you won't have that. But ta-da, Liberty, Desire, and Subjects, minus 30%. I know in the Age of Revolutions here, there's one that everybody can get. You don't just have to be Danish, where it's, I think it's 25% on a negative to their Liberty, Desire, to anybody on the same continent as you. So like if, let's say we had Bohemia, for instance, in the last age of the game, we could get that one to give them a 25% negative to their Liberty, Desire, which can be a big help also. And so those are, also if you go to the idea groups and you go to the influence ideas, I believe you get one. Yeah, there's a 15% negative on Liberty, Desire also if you have a lot of subjects and you're trying to struggle with them all. Something to keep in mind on subjects is that when it comes to people, vassals, marches, and the like, they all consider themselves all together. So let's say you had 5 vassals. They will add together all of their military power to decide this relative army power of all vassals to Denmark. So if you have a lot of them, that number can be super high and all your vassals are disloyal. When it comes to personal unions, they only consider themselves and nobody else. So Norway is only considering their army power versus mine. They don't consider Holsteins. They don't consider Sweden's. Because like this, for instance, if Sweden considered Norway and Holsteins, they'd probably be disloyal right now. But personal unions only consider themselves. So that's why, generally speaking, personal unions are a little more stable and have a little less Liberty, Desire than vassals do if you have large vassals, like if they're equal in size. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Keep in mind also, if somebody, like I was saying, Sweden maybe declares an independence war on you, you want to keep an eye out for. It's a DLC also, but if you have the DLC, other countries can say that they will back, let's say Sweden, against us if Sweden was to declare a war. So let's say Poland backs Sweden. And you'll be able to see that in the diplomatic menu. You'll be able to see it. It's not going to be here now because no one's doing that. You'll be able to see that, these people are backing Sweden. So if they attack us, those countries will automatically join Sweden in their war against us. So it can get dangerous if too many people back them, which is another reason why you don't want them to be disloyal. Because if they're loyal, they're under 50%, they're not going to declare war on you. If they get disloyal, they're going to turn on you. And something to keep in mind is that because right now we're at 44%, if we were to go into that war I was talking about earlier, it's likely we lose a lot of soldiers. If Sweden doesn't, this number will tick up because that relative army power to Denmark will get higher because we're losing soldiers temporarily and Sweden isn't. So they'll go, we're getting stronger than you, and their Liberty, Desire could potentially go over 50%. And then they turn on you because, we're also getting backed by, Teutonic Order in Poland. We can crush them and turn on you, and it can go downhill really quick. So you really want to keep an eye on everything. And I think that's probably a pretty good overview, I would say. As I said before, just a quick overview, make sure you're always looking at this button right here for disputed successions. And try to get royal marriages on people that don't have heirs, which is what this is showing you, have bad prestige, and have old rulers. Those are the best candidates if you don't want to try to do all the work of watching all these little things I pointed out. Just look for victims every once in a while in this, and slap a royal marriage down there. Maybe you get lucky. Hope that helps you. If you have any questions, let me know down below, and if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.